Hello, it's me. Yeah, it's been a while. So I've been on a huge project for the last, well, technically 2-ish years, but in the last 6 months, it's pretty much consumed my life, and I've put in so many hours in the last 6-9 months, and I haven't really shared much about this project, so let's do a quick recap. Story time. So I don't wear glasses, so I'm gonna just put them up there. I should though when I'm doing fine hand sewing because my eyes go buggy. But anyway, that's not the story I'm talking about. So I have a big family, which maybe you didn't know, or maybe you did, but I have 9 siblings, and I have a big brother who's at the top of that sibling ladder, and I'm at the very nearly end. I'm the 9th. That's not the story either. I have a big brother who's very creative and is so talented, can do so many things, construction, and pretty much he can do anything. That's the sum of it. And he's also just a super fun brother. He's had a dream for so many years, for as long as I can remember, to create a Christmas themed attraction. He had these plans over 10 years ago. It was so loosely based on this music video that he found and also just became a family favorite, which it's by the Florence Street Band, which you guys need to listen to this Christmas song. It's great, it's amazing. And also he has a new video out. That's not the story either. So this brother of mine went through many years with his wife, dreaming up this place, and finally about 3 years ago, he started creating it, turning it into reality. And the inspiration is very much European, German inspired, and also set in the olden days. That's where I come in. We'll get to that in just a moment. The overall inspiration for the Christmas Village, which it is now open, absolutely crazy. Picture the little ceramic villages that people set up and collect the items for and decorate in their house. It's that style, but life-size, blown it into life-size proportion, where you can go become a villager in a very quaint, cute village Christmas themed magical place. That is the very short version of the origin story of the Christmas Village, which is open north of Houston, so you should check it out if you're down there. But I know I'm a seamstress. This is a seamstress channel, so we should probably talk about costumes now, because that's where his little sister comes in. And I very quickly went like this to Spencer, my brother, and was like, hey, if you need costumes, I know how to do that. So yeah, that was a couple years ago that I basically signed on, and I started gathering inspiration and sourcing just an overall theme and idea for the costumes for the Christmas Village. And these costumes are for pretty much all the employees. Every employee that's coming into the Christmas Village will have a look, a costume, and a design that I needed to come up with. So there was a lot of logistics over the last, well, like the initial year of just sorting through what it looks like, how many employees, how am I gonna do multi-sized, because all these employees aren't gonna be hired until right up when it's about to open. So there was just a lot, and I spent so many months just dabbling in the design process and gathering inspiration photos, which a mishmash of like from movies or fellow seamstresses and creatives and historians, and just the overall theme and style that I wanted to create within the village. A basic overview of the era. It's not really a specific era. It's kind of the late 1800s into the early 1900s-ish. It's just a classic look, and it's not necessarily historical in a sense, but it also is, and I'm kind of mishmashing some eras with my different pieces, but overall it's just a European English old-timey vibe. And so that was where I started and ended, and in between was just picking practical pieces of the whole atmosphere that I wanted to create. And then it was, of course, deciding how to make this all happen. Welcome to the dark side of the sewing room, aka the corner that doesn't have any windows near it. And it's not the closet because I don't have any room in my closet for more fabric, but that's okay because this is all very specific for a project, so it's fine, right? Anyway, flashback to August of last year, so 2024, when I flew to LA with my mom and sister to go to the one and only fashion district and source all the materials, or a lot of the materials, for this Christmas Village project. I did a pretty rough calculation of what type of fabrics I wanted and some different colors that I wanted to bring in, and just sourcing a bunch of fabric on a budget. The LA Fashion District seemed like the best option. I had been there once before and I pretty much knew that was gonna be the best bet, and I was just hoping that it would actually make it worth all the travel expenses to not only go there, spend several days sourcing it, because you need several days in the fashion district, but also transporting it all back home. So I live in Arkansas and California is a bit of a ways away. So I had to fly this all back. I am also so grateful that my mom and sister were along for the ride and helped me, because I would not have done it by myself. Or I could have, but it would have taken so much longer. I was very organized. I had my little lists of what each items I needed, and I was on a mission, and you need to be on a mission in the fashion district or you will come home with way too much stuff and have spent way too much money. I mean, I kind of did both even with a plan, but I did better than I would have if I had not had my very specific list. But also, with my personality, I am not someone who likes to barter and bargain and try to get someone to be lower on their price. But I have learned that you have to kind of do that in the fashion district. It's just something that people do, and I had to accept that. I got so much better in this whole process of sourcing over 400 yards of fabric in my 2.5 days I spent, and that's about 400 pounds of fabric. But anyway, that's a lot of extra information there. The main thing is I knew what my budget was per yard of my different types of fabrics. So one of the main things going into the Christmas Village design process was I wanted to use as much natural fibers as possible. I didn't want to do fake wool-looking fabrics, so poly wool, I guess. I don't even know what you call it. But I knew I wanted the authentic, real look of real wool fibers, or at least a mixture, and nothing just fake poly. I wanted wool pants, wool skirts and vests, and cotton or linen blouses, and just that whole natural fibers, natural colors, still bright and fun, but nothing too crazy, just old-timey, fun, Christmassy, but also just natural and wool. Wool was just, it was a must. So anyway, I kind of had my budget of each of the different types of fabrics that I was going in looking for, just based on online pricing, and also knowing needing to make this trip financially worth it as far as saving money. That gave me a great way how to talk with the shop owners, and also know that I was buying so much quantity. When I was buying, 10 plus yards or 20 yards or even 30 yards on some of it, it was much easier to be like, hey, I'll take the full bolt. Well, discount what you get for me. That's a whole nother topic of just trying to work around what's right in those type of situations, and also knowing that I had a budget. All that to say, the amount of fabric in that area is just mind-blowing, but I was actually surprised how much natural fibers I was able to find. So that was a little bit of a concern for me because of our poly-driven world of fabrics are just hard to find when it comes to natural fibers. So that's a little bit sad, but I was able to source some amazing fabric. This is my absolute favorite one right here. It's just the perfect red. It's so soft and beautiful. I was able to find good wool fabric and linen fabrics, and I ended up purchasing 380 yards of fabric just for the Christmas Village. That does not include some other fabrics for other projects that I want to do me personally. It was at least 200-ish yards of fabric. Now, a lot of that was cheaper material or lighter weight, but I have some gorgeous fabrics that are for personal projects that I can't wait to use when I'm not sewing Christmas Village stuff. But also, getting sidetracked again, fabric is very sidetracking, yeah, when you go to the fashion district. So just be warned, you're gonna come home with more than you bargained for. After buying all this fabric and filling up with fabric depositing back in the car in the parking garage, which was several blocks away, and going back to buy more and doing that trip back and forth with nearly 400 pounds of fabric. After those days, I then needed to take this car full of stuff and get it packaged down in order to be flown back home. Yeah, I ended up having 8 checked bags, which some of them were bags and others were actually just totes that were within the checked bag size. And I then had to precisely weigh them out to not be overweight. And so that was about 50 pounds each. And I bought a scale specifically to be able to do this whole process while we were in our Airbnb. Got it down very, very precisely to each one filled as max capacity as possible. I flew with 8 checked bags. Again, I would not have been able to do this by myself. So Sophie and Mom were a huge help in just transporting everything. But also, after that whole craziness of LA, we did have some great time in the Central Coast area where I was actually born, and that was a great reward for the very exciting and just energy that's required to shop in the fashion district and then to be able to just chill for a little bit on the beach. All of that to say, that is where a majority of my fabric came from, but I also did a bunch of sourcing through eBay on different just like random lots of wool or just random fabrics. It was so fun to just go on there and be like, oh, those are the right color scheme. And so I had a bunch of just random things on top of my like bulk amount of fabrics. With that, I wanted to just create a lot of different eclectic looks, just adding in some unique pieces that were just one of a kind within the village. So after that adventure, I then had to really get it all narrowed down into each specific piece I was creating as far as style, type of piece, item, costume piece. So skirt, vest, coat, whatever, all the different pieces. I needed to figure out what I was making with all this different fabric and also figure out the whole size thing. We don't know the sizes of employees until they get hired a couple weeks before opening. So obviously you can't just wait till they're hired and then make the thing for them. So all along I knew I needed, in a sense, a multi-sized amount of costumes. And there's that added complexity of what ratio of sizes, how many extra larges do you make versus large versus medium, and just the whole size range. And how do you figure that out? And so that took a ton of time, just how to be efficient with what I was making and also make them practical for who would eventually wear them. So my basic approach was we had about 10 positions that were the iconic front of the scenes type of employees that were really interacting with the guests. And these are going to be the ones that are in full costume, overall a very put together look. And then we had the next range, which were still visible and still wanted to be dressed nicely and all that, but they were just the next range down and they wouldn't have the full collection of items and accessories and all that. And then we had the lower end, which would still get at least some part of a costume, but maybe more of a store-bought shirt or something of that nature. And so how I approached this whole sizing thing was to create a full range of size for each look of the main top people. Each of those sizes would be the full look that I wanted for that position. And so when that position was hired, their size would be taken out of that, and then all the extra pieces from the different sizes that weren't used would be bumped down to the next level, and then from there, basically a mix and match kind of look to fit their size and then maybe their specific area of where they're working. That in theory was my whole process of making sure that the main people, we had the main look for any size, and then down below, all the extra pieces would in a sense be used up within all the other employees. It did not fully work because now I'm on the other side of it. The Christmas Village is open, employees are costumed, and I now have the other perspective of how that worked out practically, which we'll talk about at the end of this. Going into making all these, that was the process. And then I had to practically start mapping everything out into, I'm making this specific fabric piece into this item in this size. And there was a lot of configuring and reworking everything. because as I was sorting fabrics out, and because I wanted that kind of eclectic look of a one-of-a-kind piece mixed into these different looks, I then realized I also needed to make sure that as they got mixed and matched with different pieces, they didn't end up clashing. So I then had to kind of rework it. It was like trying to pull size groups together across looks that all, in a sense, could be matched together with, say, a vest and a pant, or a skirt and a blouse, or whatever the looks were. And that probably sounded really complicated. And how did I figure that out? That's a good question. That took so many hours. And then there's the idea of the patterns. I was not going to draft all these patterns for each of these pieces in each of the sizes I needed it. I went on a huge Google search and just pulled a ton of multi-sized patterns that were in the styles that I wanted. And this is where I'm so grateful for a community of seamstresses and just pattern makers that have created and sourced historical patterns and turned them into multi-size patterns, or just so many different avenues that I pulled from. And so I will list all the patterns that I ended up buying. Some of them I just made as the pattern said. Other ones I tweaked it a little bit, added some different flares or details to different ones just based on how I wanted that style to be. But the base pattern and sizing were thanks to all these patterns, which I will link down below. That was super helpful. Of course, most of them are PDF only patterns, and so I spent so many hours just taping together patterns. I don't even know how many pages of paper I went through just to print up all these different patterns and sizes. It took so long. And yes, I did look into printing them up on the A0 paper, and it was going to be so much money just to do that. But now looking back at all the time I spent, it probably would have been worth it, but that's retrospect. Like, hindsight is 2020, right? So we can't really talk about that. But now I have all these multi-size patterns that could finally be assigned to each piece. So before we get to the actual sewing all these pieces and items, I had over 200 pieces planned out, ready to make or needing to be made. And so that ranged from pants to skirts to secret pants for the girls, vests, coats, blouses, capes, kind of just all the things that an old-timey Victorian-ish type outfit needs. All the accessories that also are needed, such as like hats or gloves or scarves, and those were all sourced from eBay. I don't think I bought any new things except for like at the last minute. So pretty much all the accessories for the outfits are one-of-a-kind vintage type pieces, which were pretty fun to just source and all that. Back to the sewing pieces that I needed to create. There were about 200. I needed to plan each one individually, what fabric I was making, what pattern I was making it out of, what size, and then also any alterations I wanted to do to that pattern and the style. In that, I created these very lifesaver type of organization plans. It's just everything I needed to know for each piece. This just hung up in my sewing room, and I was able to check off when I cut it and when I sewed it. This was so necessary, and it worked out really well. And I'm going to continue using this because at the end of this, you'll find out that I didn't get as much done as I had planned. These are my cut lists. I wanted to cut as efficiently as possible. When cutting out a pattern, if I was making, say, 2 of the same size, then I would want to cut them together at the same time. These are all the different fabrics that I had, and these are the different patterns that I have, the sizes of those patterns. This is just for the blouses and shirts that I was supposed to make, that I did not make. But I have all the lists for vests and skirts and pants that I did make, and it was so helpful to just also keep track of all the items that I was planning on making. Now, also something you might have noticed in these videos so far is all of this hanging in the back. Those are all my patterns. I created these kind of magnet boards, all the pieces of that pattern to it, and I even labeled the little magnet. This was mainly so that I could just keep them organized, but also keep them from getting all wrinkled and just misplaced because there's so many pattern pieces that I was dealing with. During busy seasons of work, sometimes the last thing I want to do is think about dinner and what I'm going to eat when I'm putting in such long days. And that's when Uber Eats can come to the rescue, and it's thanks to them for sponsoring today's video. With their super easy ordering process, you can have dinner delivered straight to your door. There are hundreds of options for my surrounding area, and when I was looking through, I discovered a new one and decided to give it a go. Once I made my selection, it was so easy to track the order through the app and know right when it's going to show up. Getting a yummy dinner in the middle of deadlines and really long work days doesn't have to be a hassle or a long process, or at least not with Uber Eats. Scan this QR code or click the link in my description to head to their website and use the code BELLA15 for $15 off your first order. Again, that code is BELLA15, and use it to discover new spots or have reliable old favorites come straight to your door with Uber Eats. And now it's back to work. So after hundreds of hours, quite literally, of designing, sourcing, planning, organizing, all the things to just prep everything, I could finally get to the actual practical step of cutting out and sewing and creating each of these pieces. And that was this summer. Also, my brother got this super crazy industrial fabric cutter that is super scary to use, but it can cut 4+ inches of fabric. I didn't have that much to cut, but it was helpful on some of the pants that I was cutting so many of the same size. Over the summer, I spent over 500 hours cutting out and sewing together over 100 costume pieces. Those were long days and long weeks getting them all made. In that process, I knew I was not getting as much done as I needed to get done. A couple of my nieces came in here and there and helped with things like ironing fabrics and some of the basics. And then I got to the point of, I need someone in here who can just sew some of these seams for me. And I was so grateful. I reached out, and one of my friends who wanted to learn more about sewing and just also had some skill to begin with, and she came in about twice a week and was an incredible help. I did not get any footage or pictures of us working together, but in the last 2 months, she was incredibly helpful in just being able to just sew those straight seams of the skirts or whatever it was that was just, I could prep and then she could do it, and it just cut off so many of my hours that I physically couldn't get things done. And so that was so fun to have someone in the sewing room with me and just company, and also just getting more work done. But if you did notice, I said about 100 pieces that I made over the summer. That is all that I made. I had plans for about 200, and I did not get to that. It was just so much time just planning and organizing and also trying to fit in some other stuff. And then I got to the point where I just need to focus completely on the Christmas Village costumes in order to get something done, or at least the main things done. And so that is when, also, if you've been following me for a while, that is when the bubble dress progress just kind of stopped. It came a point of like, I just needed to focus absolutely everything to the Christmas Village, and everything else was kind of at the wayside. But I am so proud of what I accomplished. And that included creating about 80 welt pockets and probably around the same number of just regular pockets for pants and all the girls' skirts and secret skirts, because obviously I was giving everyone pockets. And there's more to do next year to fill it all out, because I did get the main things like skirts and pants done, and then I ended up having to just source a bunch of bulk amount of shirts, and that was for both the guys and the girls. And then I also bought a bulk amount of just extra pants, because just other employees that I didn't want the wool pieces on, because they were doing more things like parking or just more maintenance type things that were gonna get dirty, and to have to dry clean a bunch of items all the time was not practical. So I got a bulk amount of pants and shirts, and that was shirts for all the guys. And then also I bought a bunch of blouses for all the girls. And those actually came from ThreadUp, which I had not heard about before, and I was so happy to go on there and just be able to really define what style I was looking for, and then get a lot of different looking shirts and all that were fairly good for the style. They're not all perfect, definitely not all perfect, but they gave a great starting point for the whole costumes of the village and being able to fill out the pieces that I wasn't able to get done. We finally get to the point of going down to the village. This requires sitting down again because it's time for some more story time, without the glasses this time. A few weeks before the grand opening and the training day, I went down to Texas to deliver the costume pieces that I had created and all the accessories that I had gathered. My goal for being down there was to get the costume workshop, or dungeon. That was the other nickname for it because there weren't many windows and it felt like a dungeon some days. My goal was to get it into working order so the employees could come in, find their costume, get changed into it, and it be just an orderly system of that whole process, and also just figuring out what that process would look like. But then also while I was down there, I was just helping with a lot of different random things, bringing together the final details of opening the village. And so things like that included decorating some different spots, or helping my brother set up the 35-foot tall Christmas tree, and it goes to like music, and so figuring out the wiring of that and helping him do that. And then also there's a 13-foot star on top, which you can't tell from the videos, but that's 13 feet star. And then I did a ton of sign painting, which was honestly one of my favorite things. I just love the detail and getting it all smooth and nice, and just, I did a lot of that. So that was fun. So just being able to be down there and help with those final things it was just really exciting and a great time. But also, in the meantime, I was setting up costume stuff and also trying to get a few more sewing things done. So those were full weeks. And then we got to the day of training day. And this is when the hired employees were coming in and give them their costumes. So we ended up having 85 employees come through, and I swear my costume stock shrunk as far as what I had, because towards the end I was getting so bare on everything. In looking back, there were several things that ended up happening along the way and things not coming in time that ended up making that day a pretty stressful day, trying to get everyone costumed. In the end, that was the reason for training day, is to figure out the glitches and the system of how it was all going to work. Oh, and training day happened to be my birthday. Happy birthday to you. I've never been sung to by so many people. In the next few days, I then rush ordered a lot of extra costume pieces and just sourced styles that were similar to what I created and helped fill out the whole costume look for all the employees. And then we finally made it to opening day. I'm happy to say all the employees were costumed on that day. It was a very stressful few days leading up to that after the training day situation of not everyone having their costume, but I was able to just do a lot of sorting and sourcing to fill it out, and everyone was costumed by opening day. Now, not everyone was costumed in my pieces because I just did not make enough, and that is what this coming year will be, is filling out the whole costume stock. I now know a more accurate size range, and also just completing the different pieces that I didn't get around to, such as more vests and more coats, or just coats in general, and then also creating some more unique blouses and shirts for some of those main positions. It was a huge learning curve overall. This entire process was a huge learning curve, and just figuring out what it takes to costume a village. And then having this first year open, seeing the different glitches and the different things that did work and didn't work, and being able to just fill it out and create a better system for next year. Also just being able to soak up this dream that came to life for my brother and the whole team that created the Christmas Village. Spencer, his wife Katie, his kids, and Neil and Austin, and just being able to see all their hard work pay off and open up for the first time was just such a special moment for me as a costume designer, but more so for me as a sister. So it was a very special moment, and I can't wait to just help continue the growth of the Christmas Village. Being able to be a part of it with the costumes and help kind of bring together the whole European old-timey feel and nostalgia that the Christmas Village creates.
High five, boom, 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 high five.
All that to say, I hope you've enjoyed this process of what it took to costume a village. And also, if you're near the Houston area, near Huntsville, Texas, there is the Christmas Village, which you do not want to miss the experience of. It is so magical, and each day they are improving and upgrading and just getting better and better at creating an environment where you can make memories with your family around Christmas. And then also just stay tuned because they're improving each year, and I can't wait till next year. Thank you for watching. Next year, as I fill out the costumes of the Christmas Village and add more pieces, I will try to film more of the actual sewing process because this year was just get it done. And then this next year, I'm gonna be more orderly about it. I promise I'm going to do that. Thanks for watching, and now go out there and learn, create, and inspire. I will see you with more videos about the bubble dress. I promise that is the next project to finish and complete. Just be patient because I need to reorganize everything and get my mind focused back on pink instead of red and green.